I got some good news and some bad news for everyone today. We are here to talk about the last Terrifier movie to date, though they are making another one apparently, and that is Terrifier 3. This is a new 4K UHD release from Umbrella Entertainment. This came as part of a box set that includes the first 3 Terrifier films. I do have an unboxing video of this. I do have a previous video where I review and kind of recap part 1 and part 2 of the Terrifier film series. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. So Terrifier 3, it picks up kind of at where Terrifier 2 left off. Though there is a scene at the beginning that takes place in present day time. Now, present day time for this film is a 2024 film, but present day time takes place on Christmas Eve, 5 years after Terrifier 2. But so we have a scene at the beginning where Art comes in and he viciously and gruesomely and gratuitously kills this family, including the mom and the dad and I think a little boy, and he stalks a little girl. We don't know if she was killed or not, but he probably killed her, and it's pretty gruesome, and like you would expect with Art, he comes in with an axe, and it's just wow, it's something else. But that's how it begins, and then it cuts to a flashback where we see the end of the second one where he has his head cut off. Now, from the end of the second one, we know his head comes out of Victoria. So it's like she's almost like she's pregnant, but instead of having a baby, she has like his head comes out of her, and then the nurse comes in, and then the nurse is being eaten by Art's head, and then his body comes in there, and he reattaches it. So clearly the movie has gotten completely bonkers and off the rail from where it started. The first one is kind of a gritty. It is kind of a little over the top in places, but it is more gritty. It is more scary. This one's gotten a lot more graphic with the violence, a lot more gratuitous. This is actually believed to be of the I guess you would rate this not rated or rated X. I think it's rated NC maybe 17 or something to that nature, but it's not. I don't think it's rated at all, actually. It's so gratuitous with the gore that they couldn't rate it, and this is the highest rated, as far as how much money it made at the box office. It made $89 million for a movie that's not rated. Now, this is weird. The budget for this film is $2 million. Now, $2 million to a normal person seems like a lot of money, and it is. And it makes me think that they spend more money on these movies than they need to. I don't know where the money goes. It maybe goes to producers or something. But here, $2 million, and there's a lot on screen here. There's especially with the prosthetic special effects by themselves. Now, in comparison, Smile 2, which looks really good, but it costs $28 million as opposed to $2 million. Now, the first Smile film, it has a budget of $17 million, which it doesn't look as good as Terrifier 3. So I don't know what's going on with this. But now Terrifier 3, which takes place 5 years after the events of the second one, it takes place on, like I was saying before, Christmas. So it makes it a Christmas horror movie. Now, I did recently get Silent Night, Deadly Night in from Scream Factory. Now, I wanted to review this before Christmas, but yeah, I got it in later. I ordered it from Target. They came in later with it, unfortunately. But here, it would have been nice to review this before Christmas as well, because it is a Christmas horror movie, which is awesome. But unfortunately, it came in later than Christmas, and I just have gotten around to watching it since I've watched 1 and 2. But it wasn't really a rush since it's not Christmas anymore. But I will say that they do a really good job of set decking everything for Christmas. You got Christmas props. This is a Christmas film, and it's a pretty damn good one. Even though Art the Clown, which I kind of like that it's getting crazier and crazier as it goes on, and it adds more and more backstory of mythology to the Art the Clown, and it's entertaining. I guess this one, for most people, it's probably going to be like a guilty pleasure, and it is. Like the second one and even the first one, it is in some parts really hard to watch. It gets so graphic, and to tell you the truth, a few times I had to look away from the screen. I was just like, I can't. And it's a cool thing, though. I wonder if anybody can sit there and watch it without looking away, because it is so graphic in some parts. I could probably do it, but there's definitely some parts where I'm just like, I'm not going to watch this for a couple of seconds. I don't know if everybody's got the same experience with it or not, but I feel like almost like the only good thing about it with that is the special effects, the prosthetic, and the special effects makeup in this film are off the chain. They did such a terrific job with all of it. It's just like people getting ripped up, and it just looks so sick and so real. I would think anybody who has experienced trauma, probably, which fortunately I haven't, but anyone who's ever seen anything like this in real life, with someone getting mauled or really messed up, they would most likely have a very hard time watching this film. It doesn't hold back. There are a few times where it kind of gives the audience a little bit of relief, and it doesn't show all the way on some scenes, but then it goes all in on others. I will say this about the film: it does amp up the violence, but it also does amp up the character development, especially with the main character. Sienna returns, played by Lauren LaVera, again, and I did say on the second one, I thought her performance was good in the second one, even though I did think some of the dialogue was a little cringeworthy, but it kind of worked for teenagers. I guess she's not really a teenager; she's supposed to be like in her 20s, maybe. But here, it's so like her performance here is. I'm not really gonna say better, because it kind of comes off of what happens to her in the second film, but she does such a good job of having PTSD from the events of the second film that is just so. What she's doing is so well done, and it's not done in a way. It's internal, like you see how internal. And when she does get to the part where it is an external screaming part about it, it still works, and it's not done in a. Sometimes when you see this, it's just like screaming intensity, but it's like you can tell that she's holding it in, and she's trying to live a regular life, and up until the part where she realizes that Art is for sure back. Earlier in the film, she starts to think that he is back, but she's not certain. But once it becomes certain, she's just like manic, like she should be, and everyone's thinking that she's just crazy at that part. But now that kind of happens where people thinking that she's crazy or overreacting, but that doesn't last for long, because here comes Art and killing those people who were thinking that she's overreacting, and it's not really that funny. I kind of laugh about it there, but it's like they do a good job of developing some of the characters, especially her aunt and her uncle and her little niece. Now, it is quite a relief sometimes when you're watching the film and you see some gratuitous, like, graphic, violent scene, and then it cuts back to like a normal scene, like not necessarily normal, but almost like a scene that you would expect in like a Hallmark movie or a Lifetime film. But acting, of course, is better. But you see these scenes with her interacting with her aunt and her uncle, who are supposed to be now taking care of her. And when it comes to a scene like that, like a normal scene where people aren't getting like filleted alive or whatever Art's going to do to them, chop them with the axe or whatever. But when you see a normal scene, it's almost a relief to you in a way in this because it is quite relentless. Now, Sierra's brother also returns, played by Elliot Fulham. Plays the character Jonathan, her brother, and they do a nice job of incorporating him back into the story. He's not actively living with her; he's gone off to school, but they do a good job of incorporating him into it, like later into the film. I think maybe 20 or 30 minutes into the film. Now, I will say this film runs about 2 hours and 5 minutes, which is slightly shorter than the second one, which ran about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Now, the first one is more along the lines of an hour and 30 minutes, but they do incorporate the brother back into it, and he's also suffering from PTSD, and it kind of seems like he's maybe trying to avoid her, but then they go have a conversation, and when they talk in private, he's back on the same page as her, and he talks her into going back to the site and getting the knife back, the magic knife from the second one. Now, the magic knife is the only thing that can fight Art the Clown. Now, Art the Clown, as established at the end of the first one, and even more so in the second one, he is a supernatural creature, I believe a demon, as he seems to be a demon. And there's also, in this one, like Victoria, the surviving victim from the first film who has her face mauled, she is now possessed by what seems to be the little girl from the second one, and she's now seems to be helping him. And in some instances, she seems like she might even be in charge. But she talks, unlike Art, she does talk, and it's very creepy, and she looks her face is all jacked up anyway. At one point, they kind of make her up clownish, which makes her even look more crazy. And she has the black and white suit on, kind of like he does, and she has the white face paint on her face, and And so she becomes a real problem for the family at the end. So these are, I believe, demons who have been summoned to do some kind of bidding. Now, what's odd is in this 5 years after the events of the second one, and then they reattach Art's head. They go to a building, like an abandoned building, and Victoria kind of slits her wrist and sits in the bathtub. And this 5 years later, these two workers come in and they find them. They're sitting there still, like Art's sitting there in a chair. He's completely covered in cobwebs. Something happened there, and I don't know why, but they powered down for 5 years until they had like new people come in here. The previous two films, they take place on Halloween. I thought maybe it had something to do with Halloween. Here it's Christmas, but it seems to be random that they're woken up at Christmas. Now, before I thought maybe Christmas might have something Christmas does have kind of pagan roots. I thought maybe it has something to do with that, and maybe it does, but it's not explained in the film. But anyway, so they're powered up, and there's a scene. Now, this is really, really crazy. Jeez. Now, so Art's killing this one construction worker guy, and then Victoria comes in, and she finds a metal nail on the floor, and she starts using it to masturbate. A metal nail, and she's sticking it up into herself, and while she's doing it, she's making herself bleed all over the place. And while he's killing the guy, she's getting off on it. And so that's the kind of thing that happens in this film. Now, they don't really go gratuitous with the nudity in this. There is a shower scene where there's a girl and a guy in the shower, and they are nude, but they're kind of pressed against each other, so you don't see a lot. If you see anything, it's kind of fleeting. So it's not, they don't usually go with gratuitous nudity, even though in the first one you do see some boobs and stuff when one of the girls is getting killed for quite on display. But here it doesn't really do that too much. That is an interesting kill because there's a girl who's wanting to do she's doing a podcast, like a true crime podcast, and she's obsessed with Art the Clown. So that's kind of a cool kill when he kills her. It's of course gratuitous. Now, one thing I will say about the actor David Howard Thornton that plays Art, he goes bigger in this one. Now it's hard to imagine, I'm sure, but he doesn't talk, but his performance seems even more broad in this one and more over the top than in any of the previous ones. And I don't know if it necessarily helps. Maybe it does maybe it helps take away a little bit of the edge from the violence. But I think it would almost, if they cut back a little bit on that and made it like a little bit more subtle, I think it would have a harsher effect. But I know in the first one, especially when you did see him a few times, like put on display when he sees something happen, like it seems like he really either gets off on it or really something about watching someone's expression or seeing somebody dead, especially if it's a family member. It seems like the harder it is to have that person's reaction, the more he enjoys it. And I don't know if that's something that maybe as a demon he's feeding off that energy, or if he's just like a sick, twisted bastard and just getting off on it. I don't know which one it is. But now this kind of reminds me a little bit of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, especially maybe a little bit of his first Halloween. It kind of reminds me a little bit about that sometimes. Especially there's like a bar scene that has Daniel Roebuck in it, who's in Halloween 2 as well. But he comes in, Daniel Roebuck's playing a Santa Claus, and he comes into this bar. And also, it's pretty cool. It's got a cameo kind of from Clint Howard, who's also got some dialogue in the scene. He's a couple of scenes in the bar where he comes in and he ends up killing everybody in there quite gratuitously, and the bartender too. But it's kind of a cool sequence. But it does, like a lot of it, sometimes the violence in this does remind me a little bit of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So let's take a quick peek at this. So this is an Umbrella Entertainment release. So Umbrella is an Australian company, and so it's a really nice slipcover, especially for this film. And I did see this as a poster when this was released, and I was like, that's a really cool. I thought it was a cool poster. It has Victoria in here looking really, really crazy. That's the way she looks, with her face all messed up, and Art sitting on Art's lap, very Christmassy. And I was approving of it being a Christmas horror film. Here you got Art with the axe and Santa Claus now, which is reminiscent of the Silent Night, Deadly Night films, especially the first one and the second one. But here he has it, and he doesn't have the axe for long, kind of in the beginning, but they really do. I don't know how to say good job. It's really awful what he does, but they do show that very well, and Now, later on in the film, he does have a chainsaw for quite some time, and I think this is the first time you see him with a chainsaw in this series. But he does a lot of the kills later on with a chainsaw in this film. Here he is. Here's the same thing on this disc. Here's a poster. On the reverse side of this, it's the same. It's the same as this. The only difference is it doesn't have this R rating, this Australian R rating thing here. It's just a regular cover. As far as the 4K transfer, and I want to say this about the film. Now, I did say this about the second film. I thought it would look more polished and less gritty than the first film. Now, I think intentionally, probably they did kind of try to make this film in general look more darker, which it makes it look almost worse in some ways. It does look grainier. I think this is probably shot on digital ARRI cameras, I believe. But it makes it look, they intentionally add some grain to it, or maybe they did it by mistake when they were shooting it. But there is grain in this when there shouldn't be, it seems like. And a lot of the interior scenes are kind of lit half face, and they're playing with the lighting more. Sometimes it's weird because you have, like, say the lighting here and it's like lit half face, but then like the highlights would be blown out. Again, I think that's all intentional, and it, like, the second one looks very, in comparison to the other two, it looks much more polished. The 4K transfer looks good. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen this in another version of it. I know they have other versions of 4K transfers out. I don't know if they look better than this or less grainy. I think, like I say, I think the grain's intentional, but you do see detail. You see an uptick in 4K, of course, and there's also HDR involved here. The HDR it brings out the colors better. It looks more natural with the colors. I think some of the colors, like the reds and things that are often on display here for the Christmas part, they really pop out, and the skin tones look very nice. Let's go ahead and rate the film. I'm going to rate this 3.5 stars. That's 3.5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. I'm going to give it 3.5. This is a very sick and twisted movie, but it is at the same time I like some of the stuff that happens in the film is very interesting. There is a subplot with Sienna's dad. Now, I think I've been calling her Sierra, but the character's name's Sienna. But there is a subplot with her dad, which you see in flashbacks, where Jason Patric plays her dad, and he was a comic book artist who died of a brain tumor. But he did draw some things about Art the Clown. He drew pictures of her as a teenager or a young adult, dressed up in cosplay and fighting Art the Clown, which she does. I'm interested to see, now there is a fourth one that's been announced. I'm interested to see if he appears in it, Jason Patric's character, or it appears in it again, and if they bring more to that story. I really like the idea of that backstory with him. I hope he appears in the fourth one. Now, they did announce the fourth one is supposed to wrap up all the storylines and I guess be the last one in the franchise. I think it might be a little premature to make that call. I bet the director, Damien Leone, is maybe getting tired of doing Art the Clown all the time. And it is, like, I'm sure it's not healthy for him to be thinking about that stuff all the time. But it seems a little premature to call it the end of the franchise. So I guess we'll see what the fourth one brings. But some of those other franchises like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, I mean, I guess most of them, the fifth movie in most occasions was probably the worst in it. And maybe he's worried that going 5 films might take it down the wrong path. But I'm going to give Umbrella, which I've already given them, I'm going to give them 4.5 stars. Just on this set's amazing. I highly recommend it. Now, it is, like I say, this is a very disturbing film. It is maybe a guilty pleasure. I've enjoyed it more than I should enjoy it, but I do feel kind of weird sometimes after watching it from just seeing the sick stuff, and then after that I try to watch another movie that doesn't have it in there, and it's like not necessarily another movie. I need to watch other stuff other than horror movies for a little bit, because this kind of thing, it's just so gross. But I started watching I was watching like Rumpelstiltskin the other day, and it was just like, I'm like, damn, these kills are lame. But anyway, let me know what you think about this franchise that's going into number 4. I guess we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you think about specifically Terrifier 3. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Thanks for watching.